Hi there. In this video, I'm going to introduce HTML templating and describe the problem it solves. I'll be using PHP because of its ease of setup, but the concept covered relate to any server-side template language, including PHP or Node.js or Python. So to begin, I just have an empty folder here. What I'm going to do is go ahead and open my folder in Visual Studio Code. The first thing I'm going to do is make a new file. I'm going to name this index.html. So what I'm going to illustrate first is I'm going to create a few HTML files, and my idea is going to be to make a pseudo social network to illustrate kind of the pitfalls of HTML, and then we'll introduce our PHP to help us write more efficient HTML code. So first things first, in VS Code we can just type HTML and select this, and this will give us some boilerplate. I use the HTML5 one. And next what I'm going to do, even though we're just looking at HTML right now, I'm going to use PHP just to start a simple web server so we can navigate to localhost and visit this page instead of opening the file path in Chrome. So you may or might not have PHP installed. So I have terminal down here, and one way to check if PHP is installed is we can type which PHP, and if I hit enter, I can see I have PHP installed. If you don't have it installed, you should get an error. To install it, you can do brew install PHP, and that will run. You can see I already have it installed, but yeah, it may take a minute for it to install, so feel free to pause the video if you need to do that, and then come back when it's done. So to start a super basic PHP web server, and once again, I'm just using PHP to illustrate these concepts. What we can do is type PHP -S and then localhost : I'm going to use 8000. This is our port number. This number could be, for the most part, any 4-digit number. When I hit enter, you should see something similar, and if I command click, it should open localhost 8000 in your web browser. And right now we should just see a blank page. So yeah, let's get to writing some HTML. So I'm going to add a h1, call this my social my social network, save, reload. So we can see right now we have a simple web server that localhost is basically pointing to our folder, and in HTML our index file is the file that's loaded by default. We could also go to the file directly. You can see here this is doing the same thing. Okay, so this will be the home page for our hypothetical social network, and in our social network we will have some user profiles. I'm going to go ahead and make a new file. I'll call these profiles people's first names. So we'll make a page called Mark. Once again, I will use VS Code's boilerplate, put some HTML5 boilerplate. And here I will make an H1 and put Mark Johnson. Okay, and let's go back to our index file. Let's make it H2 with list of users, and let's make a link that will go to our mark.html file. So you can see on my index page we now have a link. If I go, it will go to our mark.html file, and we have their name here. I'm going to add a little bit more HTML. Let's add a paragraph tag. This could be their profile. I am super cool. And you can see the paragraph. There's a great site. This person does not exist. Let's just get a dummy image. This is a website that uses AI to generate images of people who don't exist. Let's save this image. I'm just going to go ahead and make a images folder purely for organization. And I'm going to name it mark.jpg. And now in Mark's, I'm going to make my terminal a little smaller here. In Mark's HTML page, I'm going to point to this image. So images, VS Code nicely completes that. Now we can see we have Mark's image. Let's make this just a little smaller. Also, one thing I want to point out is I won't be covering any CSS in this tutorial, just for simplicity's sake. So I'll use HTML width and height to make the image smaller. Great. Now let's go ahead and add a navigation bar to link back to our home page. Make an HTML nav element. This will go to our /, just our root directory. Call this home. I'm actually going to put slashes in front of all these paths. Without the slash, these URLs are relative, which means it will start from where the file is. In this case, this won't change anything since our Mark file is in the root, but yeah, just for good practice, I'm going to put slashes here. And so let's load this. So what I did, we added this nav with a link element, and when we go, it should bring us home. And great. Let's even just fill in the title here. The title controls what is shown in the name of the tab. It's called Mark Johnson. Here we can call this my social. Okay. And the next thing I'm going to do is let's take what we're going to do is make another user profile page. So how we could do that is just I'm going to go to File, Save As. Let's name this Jessica. And what we can do, as you might guess, is just go ahead and change this content to be for a profile of someone named Jessica. You can do Jessica Jones, just making up names here. And let's just change some of this. I'm really awesome. And let's go ahead and find a new image. I just reloaded. It gives us a new one each time. So I'll put this in the same images directory, name it Jessica, and in my Jessica file, I will just change this to Jessica. And then one last step, in our index file, we will copy the Mark link, change what file it points to, and change the text. Great. So now I have Jessica Jones, go home, Mark Johnson, and great. I'm also, just to format the page a little better, I'm going to make an unordered list and put these links in a list just to make a little bit nicer navigation. Shortcut I'm using here, if you hold down Command and hit left and right, and we'll go to the beginning and end of the line. And so if we're at the beginning of the line, we can hold Command and also Shift and hit right, which will select the whole line. Great. So what I did, I just added a UL, stands for unordered list, with 2 list items with each link. And now when we go home, these will just be in a little bit of a nicer list. Cool. So let's go ahead and add one more page here in regular HTML. And then we will start to see where HTML isn't really, it starts to get a bit difficult to manage many pages with. So I'm going to go ahead and add an about page. And we'll just use the HTML template, about, set h1, what are we calling? Calling it my social network. This is a social network built in HTML. Okay. And we should make a link to this page so that we can navigate to it. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is, when just working with regular HTML, a lot of times I will copy stuff and just use it as a base. So I don't have to retype everything. So I'm going to take the navigation from one of our profile pages. I'm going to put some navigation in our home page or our index page. And now I'm going to make an about link, which will link to our about HTML. So now we have a home link, which just goes to the page we're on. We have an about link. And yeah, so you'll see here, you might expect, most websites have a navigation that is consistent across all the pages. Usually, I would imagine that if I'm on the home page and I go to the about page, the navigation should still be there. Maybe it shows what item you have selected, but so let's go ahead and so we're in our index. Let's copy the nav we just made in our index file and put it in our about page. Whoops, the wrong shortcut. Copy, paste. So now our about page has the nav. So it goes home and about. But then again, once we go to the profile pages, you'll see that this nav, we also need to add the about link. So I'm just going to take the same code, overwrite the whole nav in Jessica, and I'm going to do the same thing with Mark. And you'll see now these profile pages link to the home and about page. So maybe you already are starting to see one of the pitfalls of HTML, which is there's a lot of copying and paste, a lot of duplication going on. In HTML, we don't have any access to common programming tools. So in HTML, we can't do any if statements. We can't import other HTML files into our HTML file. There are no for loops. Yeah, the creators of HTML intentionally made it extremely simple, and it is strictly made for writing HTML markup. And so, even though our site is pretty small, only 4 pages, and it's not too bad to, copy and paste HTML from one page to another. Imagine our social network had hundreds or thousands or even hundreds of thousands of users. As you can imagine, this would start to get extremely tedious and even error prone and time consuming to copy HTML from one file to another. Say we wanted to put our company name in the navigation. Right now, the way I would have to do that is I would start in one of the files, index.html, and I would put our company name in the nav. You'll see it's here. Obviously, in a real site, we would use CSS to make this look nicer. But once again, when I go to other pages, that company name is not in the nav because I need to go ahead and add it to each one of these pages. So, as I said, imagine you had thousands of pages on your social network. This type of task would start to become virtually impossible. Could be error prone. You may put a typo in one file. You may forget to update one file. And yeah, this is something that HTML itself can not solve. So this is where a templating language can come into play. And PHP is a server-side language which lets us do templating in HTML. Just to cover some terms, what server-side means is it is running. In this case, the server is my terminal. So PHP is running here. And the opposite of the server is the client. A client is a browser. And I will illustrate why PHP is a server-side language. So the nice thing about PHP is, also just to clarify, we are already running our PHP server, which we did in the first step down here. And yeah, we can just activate, we can convert our HTML pages into PHP pages by simply just changing the file extension to PHP. And you will see that our home page is still loading. And this is, right now, it's still just purely showing this HTML. PHP files can contain HTML, but they also can contain PHP code. And in PHP is where we can do some more programming patterns that we're used to in other languages, like if statements, for loops, includes, and stuff like that. So yeah, let's go ahead and move our navigation into a separate file and include it in this file. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is purely for organization. All this folder structure, you can organize your folders however you want on your project. You don't need any folders, or you could have as many folders as you would like. I'm going to make a folder called templates. And a template is a term for a reusable piece of HTML code. This is not unique to PHP. It's a general web development term. In my templates folder, I'm going to add a new file, call it nav.php. And I'm just going to cut my nav code, HTML, and put it in here. Let's fix the indentation. And in place of this nav, I'm going to put some PHP code. So to write PHP code, to start writing your PHP, you can write a $! PHP and then $! PHP, and we can put PHP inside of here. And the way to include another PHP file is we can just put include, and in quotes we point to that file. So we're in index and we want to go into templates /nav.php, and let's go ahead and reload. Great. So let's kind of take a look at what's going on here and explain a little bit about why PHP is a server-side template language versus a client-side template language. So our web browser, in this case Firefox, but any web browser really, Google Chrome, Safari, our web browser only understands HTML. One quick way I can illustrate this is we can open up an HTML file directly in our web browser. The image doesn't load because of some file path stuff, but what I want to illustrate is Firefox can take an HTML file and it knows how to display it. We can close this tab. On the flip side, I can't do this with the PHP file. If I go and open this PHP file in Firefox, it's going to try to download the file. The reason for in another web browser, it may even show you the text based on how your browser is configured. But basically, web browsers do not know what a PHP file is. They see the file and they're like, you must want to download it because we don't know how to display it. And so that is the whole function of our server here. So in my web browser, when I go to this URL, our server, let's clear our server really quick. It's still running. I just cleared out the output. If I reload the page, we can see the server got a message saying I want to load my root page, and by default it's going to look for index.php. And what our PHP server is going to do is it's going to look in this file, it's going to execute any PHP it sees, and then it is going to send the end result of this execution, which is HTML. It will send the HTML to the browser. So if I go ahead and I view page source, you can see that this PHP line 10, is not in our view source. Instead, what we see in place of line 10 is our nav code. So you can think of it like when PHP sees an include, it's going to look for this file, and it's going to take the file contents, similar to as if we were to copy this file, and it's going to put it where that include was. So Firefox is not aware of any of that PHP code. All of that PHP code is executed on our server, and then our server is sending a HTML string to our browser, and our browser knows what to do with that. So the great thing about this is now we can have our nav HTML in one file, and we can now use this include in all of our other files. So I'm going to close these really quick. Let's go ahead and rename our files one by one. So let's go to about, rename it to about.php, which that is the only thing we need to do to convert this to a PHP file. Let's delete our nav code, save, and then one thing you'll notice is right now our link is broken. That's because we were linking to about.html. You can see about.php will fix that. So let's also go inside of our template and change our link here. And now you will see that our about page should look the same as before, but let's add some, let's change some text in here quickly. I put number 123 in nav.php, and we can see now if I reload the about page, it got updated here, and if I go to the home page, it also got updated here. So the benefit now is I have all my nav code in one place, and I just need to make my updates in this file, and it will automatically be pulled into the other ones. So let's continue this process. Let's rename our Jessica file to PHP, rename our Mark file to PHP. Let's grab this include and put it in Jessica and Mark. And lastly, we have to fix our HTML links to point to our PHP files. I removed that 1, 2, 3. That was just to illustrate. And yeah, let's see. Mark. Okay, the nav is there. Jessica, the nav is there. Awesome. So yeah, this was a super simple example of how we can use a server-side template language to move some of our duplicated code into one file and use that one file. The next thing I'm going to show is to push this idea a little bit further and illustrate how we can send data into these templates and make our templates a bit more dynamic. So an example of how this might be useful is, let's say on our social network, we decided, we being the creators of the social network, we wanted to move the user's profile image below their name. So what I can do is, in HTML, I can take the image, put it below the name. That was in the Jessica file. So yeah, you'll see that Jessica's name is above her image now. But you'll see that Mark's image is still above his name. Let's compare these. So if I switch between these two, as you might expect, I only updated the HTML in the Jessica page, and therefore the Mark page did not update. So if I only had HTML, I would have to go to the Mark page, swap them, and now these layouts are consistent. And once again, this wasn't too bad with just 2 user profile pages, but imagine your social network has thousands and thousands of users. This would be very unrealistic to do every time you wanted to change your design. So how we're going to do this is we are going to make a template for our profile page, but we're also going to need to use some variables to have different data in each profile page. Because on Mark's page, we want to have Mark's name and Mark's photo, and on Jessica's page, we want to have Jessica's name and Jessica's photo. And this starts to get into the concept of data versus presentation. And I'll slowly start explaining this concept of data versus presentation as we start coding this. So what I'm going to do is, in my templates folder, let's make a new file. We can call it profile page. The name of these files is arbitrary. And what I'm going to do is just take either Jessica or Mark and put it in this file. And let's just go ahead and delete Jessica for now. I deleted all the code, and now I'm going to do is do another PHP include, and we're in the Jessica file, and we want to include the profile page file. So I'm going to do include templates / profile page.php. I type templates because it's in the templates folder, and it's the profile page file inside of there. Let's save. Great. You'll see I put a semicolon in PHP. The semicolon is optional at the end. I'll just remove it to be consistent. Okay, so what I did was, right now, all I did was I took the HTML from the Jessica file and put it in the profile page file. Our HTML also had some PHP for the nav. So now if we load Jessica, we shouldn't see any change. But you'll realize that now, so I want to use the same template for Mark. We can imagine our issue is going to be, now if I go to Mark, his page has Jessica's information on it because I'm including this profile page which has Jessica's information. So how we can fix this is we can pull our data out of this HTML and assign it to variables using PHP. So what I'm going to do is go back to my Jessica file. In PHP, this is how you do a one-line piece of PHP code. We can also write multiple lines of PHP by just bringing this code to the new line. I prefer to put semicolons at this point. Let's just save and show this didn't change anything in our output. And now what I'm going to do is create some variables. So in PHP, how you do that is you can put a $, your variable name, put an equal sign, and then let's go ahead and take Jessica's name, and we will make the name variable equal to the string Jessica Jones. Let's take the image and create an image variable. And lastly, let's make a variable called description and take Jessica's description. Great. So at this point, all I've done is made some variables. This will not actually do anything yet. Creating a variable is just kind of putting it there. But now what we want to do is utilize these variables. So these variables get created in this file, and in PHP we can actually just access those variables inside of our included file. In PHP you can do this. In other template language you can sometimes pass variables into the file, but here we can just define them and they're already accessible. So how we can use these variables is let's go ahead and first let's do the name. So let's delete Jessica's name. We are going to do some PHP code. So $PHP. And what we're going to do is there's a PHP function called print, and we are going to print $name. Remember, this is our name variable. Let's see here. Jessica. So we appear to be having a problem. We may need to, we may need to define this as global. Let's see if this fixes it. Nope. Sorry, bear with me. So we are, oh, yep. That's because we are on the Mark page. Let's go to Jessica. Okay, here we go. Sorry, ignore that. Let's close Mark for a second. Okay, ignore that global thing. PHP has global variables, but by default, the variables are global. So yeah, let's continue replacing the data with PHP variables. So the process I'm doing here is I'm going in, and Jessica Jones is a piece of data, right? So I'm replacing those pieces of data with variables, but I'm leaving our HTML, which is our presentation. What I mean by that is here we have a H1, and an H1 is causing Jessica's name to be large here. This type of thing belongs in our HTML. We don't want to put this h1 into a variable because it's not necessary. The things we want to make variables are our pieces of data. And when we get to the mark page, this idea will be illustrated a bit further. So what I just did was I cleared the image source out. I left the quotes. I'm printing our image variable. And lastly, I'm going to take our description and print description. Great. So Jessica's page right now, doing the same thing as before. However, we are now creating some variables in the Jessica file, and then using those variables in our profile page, PHP. And so where the power of this becomes helpful is I'm going to copy Jessica's PHP file. We're going to go into mark. Mark is where we're seeing that error. I'll just explain that error we got. If we go to mark, we'll see undefined variable because right now the mark file is just loading the profile page file, and we aren't actually creating those variables that we were before. So let's just get the Jessica code, put it in the mark code, and let's update the variables for mark. I believe I said I am super cool. Great, and now if we load mark, we will see mark is back working. And so once again, what we've done is we have gotten rid of some code duplication. Before creating this profile page template, if we wanted to move anything around on the profile page, we would have to edit every single profile page HTML file. Now, if we want to edit stuff on the profile page, we can just simply go into our profile page file and make our change. Let's say we want the image back above the header. Now, I changed one file and both of my user profiles. Let's reload this. Oh yeah, yep, the image above the name. Let's double check mark. Yep, so now the image is above the name in both of our user profiles. So yeah, just to elaborate the data and presentation thing again, what we've done is we have moved our pieces of data into variables. And our presentation is, in this scenario, just purely our HTML. Our presentation means we could, this isn't totally semantic or correct HTML, but say we wanted to, or let's say we want to make our H1 red. We can just do some inline CSS. I'd recommend making an actual CSS file, but for the sake of illustration, we can change some presentation code. And this kind of code is living inside of our PHP file in HTML. Yeah, and that is basically an overview of where HTML templating languages can really help you out. Once again, purely with HTML, we could not store anything in a variable. I'm not going to go too deep in this tutorial, but we could, in PHP, we could have a for loop that would loop through things. We could have some if statements to do some logic inside of our code. Yeah, the possibilities start to become endless with PHP. A lot of times you won't be having these variables right here. You'll actually be pulling data from a database and sending it to your PHP file. And yeah, I hope this tutorial taught you something new, and thank you for watching.